Mac Power Users, episode 696, App Subscription Check-In. Hello and welcome back to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Hackett. I'm joined as always by my friend and your friend, Mr. David Sparks.
Hey, Stephen. Thank you for that nice introduction. What a great way to start a podcast.
I love doing the show. You know, we've been doing it. I keep thinking I'm like new to the show, but I've been here like 4 years or something.
You're not.
It's been a long time, having a lot of fun.
I mean, you started at around 450 and we're now inching towards 700.
I know.
So you're an old MPU hand at this point, buddy.
I cannot believe episode 700 is so close. I feel like we did 500 live at MacStock like 2 weeks ago, but It was a little bit longer than that.
I've had several, let me just say this real quick. I've had several longtime listeners, like when I meet them or they email me and say, hey, you know, when Katie left, you picked the right guy. You picked the right guy.
That feels good to hear.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, here we are at episode 696. What are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, we're going to get into the world of app subscriptions. It's been a while since we've checked in on what we're using and sort of that world, but a couple of preliminary things first. This episode is recorded out of time, to borrow a phrase from our friends at Cortex. We're recording this before WWDC, but you were listening to it after WWDC. It's just very complicated with all the travel, and I backed a family vacation up right against WWDC. And so next week, we will be back into WWDC content. That's going to be a feedback episode next week, kind of half feedback, half dubbed stuff. So this is a little out of time. So just wanted to lay that out there.
As you listen to this, I'm struggling with betas for you.
Yeah,
because we're going to talk about it next week on the show. But right now, I'm recording this on the stable Mac, but I can't guarantee I will be next week.
Oh, that hurts me. There's that going on. So, you know, we're not talking about app subscriptions on the headset, but that's kind of where we are in time. And today on More Power Users, which is the longer ad-free version of the show that we do each and every week, we just want to do like a project check-in. David and I both have some sort of long-term projects we're working on this year, and we thought it would be good to kind of touch base on those. We've talked about a few of them. Some of them we probably haven't, and we thought we would just, you know, middle of the year, just kind of see how it's going.
Yeah. Well, let's get started, though. We're going to talk today about subscriptions and where we are at. Everybody gets a little hot under the collar about subscription. Well, I'm not going to say everybody. Some people do, and I get it. For so long, the business model in the software business was simple. You bought an app and you used it, and then maybe a year or 2 or 3 later, they came out with a new version. And if you wanted to update, you could. A lot of times they'd have an update price, like they gave you a discount if you updated it, and then you were back to the races and using the app until the next update shipped. And that changed. There's a bunch of reasons that changed. A big part of it is Apple. They don't put upgrade pricing into the business model for the various app stores.
Yeah,
but I think a bigger driver of it really is just the prices. I mean, it used to be that you would normally pay $50 to $100 for an application. And with the arrival of the App Store, it suddenly went down to, $3 to $10 for an application.
I've often wondered if Apple's lack of upgrade pricing in the App Store, I mean, maybe in the beginning it was just something that wasn't there, right? Maybe they didn't get to it or whatever. But clearly at some point that became a decision, right? They made a decision. This is the way software is going to go. And of course, initially that was just the iPhone and the iPad, and the Mac App Store came along, and it has affected things even outside of the Mac App Store for the exact reason I think you were talking about. Like, yes, Apple was maybe at the tip of the spear, but the business model has changed because of those pricing demands, and software is more complicated today than ever. If you just think about a relatively simple app in the Apple ecosystem, to be considered viable in the eyes of most customers, you have to be on multiple platforms, right? iPhone, iPad, Mac, maybe the watch, if that makes sense. Maybe the headset, if that's real at this point. That means you have to have data syncing between all of those apps, right? So you're using
Yeah.
iCloud or something else. You have to have all the features. So you need widgets, and if live activities make sense, and push notifications, right? The world is complicated in the Apple ecosystem, and charging $10 one time 8 years ago doesn't make a business sustainable anymore. It just doesn't. And that shift to subscription has let developers charge less more frequently, and that gives them cash flow each and every month. They're not holding back features and releasing every 3 years and hoping people come along for the ride. It's they're getting a little bit each month or each year, and it means their businesses can be stable and can grow over time. As a business owner, that's exactly what I want, right? Relays turned to membership a couple of years ago, and it's less than half our revenue. But seeing this through a different lens, like, I can depend on that income as a company each and every month. And it means the company is less battered around by the wind, right? The things going on in the ecosystem or the ad market or whatever. And so I totally get why developers have moved to this.
Yeah, I mean it is a big difference from what it was, but it does make life for them easier. And I also think it's almost a necessity because there were plenty of good little productivity apps during this transition that failed because they charged $5 once.
Yeah.
They didn't have a subscription model or a way to get additional income, and the developer just ran out of gas. I mean, you can only get so far, and so the transition to subscription, I think, was inevitable given kind of the market condition. I also think that I do like to try and keep it in perspective. Like as we're recording this, it's the day after Memorial Day in the U.S. And my kids were both in town. We said, okay, we're going to go out and have a nice meal together, the whole family. And we went to a really nice restaurant. By the time I was done eating, it was $150 for all four of us and the tip and everything. And I got thinking, that's a lot of money. But that was one meal, And then I look at these apps I'm subscribing to, and they're $3, $4, or $5 a month. And I'm like, that's not nearly so much money for something I use every day. And so try and keep some perspective about it too. But I do have a bit of experience with several developer friends who have made this transition. And there are apps that were, and a lot of times the developer was seriously considering just shutting it down because they weren't able to make it work. And then they switched to a subscription model, and then suddenly they've got recurring revenue. Not only are they not shutting it down, the app is getting better.
Yeah. I don't want to speak for him, but I know we've talked to Greg over at Drafts a lot on the show over the years. And I think Drafts is a great example of an app that the subscription move has made tons of sense because he's been able to really keep the pedal down. Like, his release schedule is so impressive to me. And it's new features, it's cleanup, it's adopting new things, as Notion showed up on the scene, right? Or Craft or Evernote went away, like all those things, like he has to change and adapt to those things. And the subscription lets him do that. And I think it's been really successful for him. And he's sort of always the example in my mind of this is a developer who is really taking the subscription model and making it work for everybody.
Yeah. A Fantastical is another version of that. I know people are unhappy with the amount they charge, but they decided they wanted to be a professional app, so they're going to charge more. But the same thing, they are constantly issuing new features and they're constantly adding new bits to it. And if you want a calendar that really kicks butt, this is the one that does that. And next month there'll be more. And I do think that's another nice benefit of paying a subscription, because there are benefits. And, one of them is you have confidence the app isn't going to just go away and you're going to have the rug pulled out from under your feet. But I think another benefit is you have the right to demand constant improvement.
Mm-hmm.
The old model, developers held features because they had to have a list of them in 2 or 3 years. So you would be encouraged to pay the upgrade fee. So if they had something new, they would not ship it until it was time to do the big upgrade. And then they'd have a list of things they'd done. Whereas under the new model, as soon as it's ready, they ship it because they want you to see you're getting value for your money. And I think as a subscriber, I have a right to expect that apps I'm subscribing to continually improve. And if they don't, then I'm no longer going to be a subscriber. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the healthy relationship of it.
It also gives you an opportunity as a consumer, as a customer, to evaluate on a regular basis if the tools you're using and paying for still make sense. We have a section later in the show of subscriptions we've canceled or moved on from. And I'm much more willing to do that than say like back when I was buying Photoshop, every 3 years for $400 or whatever. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, like you get like a weird sunk cost fallacy thing going on. But if I'm paying $5 a month for something and I switch apps or it just doesn't make sense anymore, I can just turn it off and I've paid for the time I've used and I'm not paying for it now and I'm not using it now. So in a way, it gives more power to the customer. And like you said, it gives developers a both an incentive, but also sort of like an agreement with their customer that, hey, we're going to make this work for you over the long term in a way that didn't it didn't always work out that way in the previous business models.
Yeah, agreed. And that, I think that's just the way to look at it. It's not that subscriptions are bad or good. It's just different. And you just have to figure out how that fits for you. And if you want to minimize subscriptions, then that's what you do. Pick the ones that really are useful, keep those, and cut the fat.
Yeah.
If you don't mind and you're willing to be more experimental, and we're going to go through later some of the stuff we've subscribed to. And I'm always trying new stuff out, but part of my job is to try stuff out so I can tell people about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have to kind of make our own decisions in that regard. But I don't think you should look at them as inherently evil. If you do, I don't think that's healthy. I mean, that this is just the way it is, and there are some real benefits to you if you take advantage of them. And if you bump into a developer that just seems to want your money and is not going to give you that continued improvement, then subscription gives you an easy way to jump out the window and hit the parachute, right?
Yeah. And in a way, I didn't think about this just now when you were talking, but I think it makes sense. Subscriptions align the software industry with the rest of the world, right? Like I pay my utility bill monthly for my usage, right? I don't write my utility bill a big check every 3 years and then just coast, right? I'm paying it monthly. I'm putting gas in my truck a couple of times a month because I'm using it continuously, right? In a way, the software industry was an aberration to the rest of the economy where you pay for things as you go all the time, right? That's kind of how most of the world works. And I definitely understand that there are bad actors on the App Store and in the ecosystem, right? People that are charging too much for something that's too little. But again, as the consumer, we have the power. The market has the power to say, look, what you're charging for this doesn't make sense. And people vote with their dollars and with their feet. And that's a good thing, I think, overall.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about managing subscriptions before
Okay.
we get into our choices. Apple has done a great job of making this easy. And if you go into your App Store application, you can go to your settings, and from there, there's one push that gets you to a web served page that has a list of all your subscriptions. You can go through it. You can edit the subscriptions. You can tell it to, not renew this one or renew this one. And Apple gives you warning emails before they renew. I feel like Apple did this right.
I do too. I like that it shows the date that it's going to renew. You can also have, so I have this turned on. You can have emails sent to you, like, hey, this subscription is coming up. And it is, yeah, it's really easy to manage. This used to be a bit more buried. And in the last couple of years, they've made it much, much simpler. I used to have a shortcut that I maintained because this used to be like buried in the App Store settings. And now, like you said, you just go in there, you tap on your face, you hit subscriptions, and you're all set.
Another thing I like about it is this page not only manages app subscriptions, it also manages Apple Care if you're paying Apple Care on a monthly basis. So it's one place you can go to and see all of your devices that are getting monthly Apple Care. And I find that really useful too. And as I get rid of hardware, as hardware gets older, I can turn it off and not feel like I'm kind of lost in the money that's going to Apple.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to just take an interlude before we get into the nitty gritty. We have gone off and on about these legacy accounts on Mac Power Users for the entire 700 episode run of the show. I got a iPod before I got an iCloud account. I mean, like a lot of people, iCloud didn't exist when the iPod first started hitting it. And so we had a single account that all of our media was on for a long time. And, we bought music and movies and all that stuff. And I have been trying to get away from that ever since. And Apple has this weird thing where you can have, your iCloud account, plus you can have a legacy like iTunes account where you have purchases in it. And, it gets weirder because the iPhone came along in the interim. So I bought a lot of apps on that legacy account. And I think a lot of listeners kind of go through the same problem. I decided about a year ago that it was time to just try and move. I kept hoping there'd be some kind of amnesty where you could just take everything and move it from one account to the other like one time.
Yeah.
But my guess is lawyers, blah, blah, blah. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I just started buying everything new on my iCloud account. We have a family account. I made the legacy account a family member, so I can kind of still get to that stuff, and it hasn't really been too intrusive. It caused a little bit of a problem on the Apple TV because then I have two Davids on the Apple TV, and one of them has all the old media and the other one doesn't. But as we move to this world where, we have Disney Plus and we have a lot of these subscription services, my old copies of Star Wars that I bought they're as important that I have access to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in the midst of that for a year, and occasionally it comes up on the show. I thought in relation to this show, I'd just kind of update you. It has not been that bad doing this, but I have not like shut down the legacy account. It's still around. I can still access it to stuff, but I find rarely do I need to do that. And a big part of it for me was I unsubscribed from everything that was subscribed through the legacy account. And then just as they ended, I resubscribed on my iCloud account.
Okay.
So I have effectively moved all subscriptions out of the legacy account. And, this is a thing that takes some time if you want to do it. There's no need to subscribe twice, right? So let the subscriptions expire that you have already purchased. But then you can move those over easy enough. You just got to switch between them in terms of, which account you're on when you're managing those subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
And my life is getting easier. So this has overall been a happy story, but I wish I didn't have to go through this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that situation. We certainly are, where we had a shared Apple ID for purchases, and then we moved to iCloud Family Share. And I think so many people have so many different setups. I understand why Apple hasn't waved the magic wand, and like you said, lawyers are definitely involved. But yeah, I'm glad for that update, because if you do kind of take the time and clean it out, you can over time consolidate things, but it's definitely not as clean as I wish it was. This episode of Mac Power Users is made possible by TextExpander. You can get 20% off your first year by visiting textexpander.com/MPU. If you work in a team, you know that communicating faster so everyone can focus on what's most important is a really big deal. And with TextExpander, your team's knowledge is always at their fingertips. Get everyone on the same page by getting information out of silos and into the hands of everyone who needs it. You can share your team's knowledge across departments, so your team is sending a unified message to your customers, and they're not spending time reinventing the wheel. So this can look like a bunch of different things. At Relay FM, we use TextExpander to make sure that we have all of our sponsor names correctly spelled and capitalized, because a lot of companies use different styles over the years, and we want to make sure that we get that right every time so we look super professional. I use it in my membership support. So I have a TextExpander snippet that I type, and it gives me a drop down of URLs that I often need to send members, like reset a password or download a podcast, whatever it may be. It makes work much more efficient. So here's how it works. You store everything you need in TextExpander: emails, phrases, messaging, URLs, and then you share it. You get your whole team access to all the content they need to use every single day. You can organize it by department and then expand it. They can deploy that content with just a few keystrokes across any apps that they're using because Text Expander is available on the Mac, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, and iPad. Any place you can type, you can use Text Expander. Show listeners will get 20% off their first year. That URL you want to visit is textexpander.com/MPU to learn more and sign up. And my thanks to Text Expander for supporting the show.
All right, so we've got various categories of apps that we're subscribing to. I think there's a lot of it's a little squishy between the two of them, to be honest. but we're going to start breaking it down. We decided we're going to start with productivity apps. So, Stephen, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the two sort of big ones for me, and it's Microsoft 365 and Adobe Creative Cloud. Microsoft 365 mostly for the rest of my family. So I need Office very rarely. It's not very often that I can't do something in iWork and just export the document, right? But my wife and two of our three kids use Office pretty heavily at school, and they can log in with their school accounts and get access to everything. But the school system doesn't give them downloads to like install 365 on their own devices. And so I pay for the family, I think it's like 4 or 5 seats of Office or Microsoft 365. They're like Google. They've changed the name of this over the years, and I cannot keep it straight.
Yeah.
And that's really more for the family, and it's their system for like logging in, like, okay, yes, I want this computer authorized and stuff is really pretty great. Very rarely do I run into an issue in like migrating a computer or something where I have to, log into Microsoft and like figure out what's going on. It seems to just kind of figure it out on its own pretty well. And I know that they always have updates, right? So if there's an update to Word or Outlook or something, they can just run it. I don't have to worry about, one kid's on Office 2018 and someone else is on Office 2022 and they're not compatible in this weird way. Microsoft has really smoothed all of that out over the years with their products.
I used to know this lawyer who was like the Orange County hitman for Microsoft. Like he would just go around suing companies on behalf of Microsoft that were using illegal versions of Office. I don't know how they figured it out, but Microsoft would send him a list, and like he'd go in and somebody had like one license they were running on like 200 computers, and he would sue them. And it's like I was thinking, man, I wonder what he's doing today, because you're right, with Microsoft Office 365, they made it really easy to get multiple licenses at your workplace and just always have the most recent version. I would say I have wizard level skills at Microsoft Word. I used it for 30 years and I'm really good at it. In fact, but when I stopped being a lawyer, with some glee, I canceled my 365 account because I just, for the stuff I'm doing now, Pages is fine. But I'm tempted to go resubscribe for a couple months just to play with their AI stuff and just so I can talk about it and see how it's going. But yeah, right now I am not a 365 subscriber, even though I have been most of my life.
Yeah, a lot of people can totally get by without it, right? I mean, I do. It's really just the rest of the household that keeps me to it. The other big one for me is Adobe Creative Cloud, which is solely, mostly in the work category for me. I pay for the subscription that has access to both the visual tools, so Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, but also Audition, which is their audio editor. I don't edit my shows in Audition, but I do a lot of pre-flight stuff. So their noise cancellation is really good. Their volume matching is fantastic. And so I process files through Audition, and then I edit my shows in Logic. So I know that's kind of a weird workflow. A few people do it like I do, I think, but I'm kind of using the best of both worlds. And so that just comes out of the business each month. I think it's like $58 a month or something. If I didn't need Audition, I could bring that down and just use the visual tools. But one thing these both have in common is you can download the applications from the vendor that you need. And so with Creative Cloud, I'm not necessarily using all of the tools that they have. But if I go into the Creative Cloud app on my Mac, And I say, oh, you know what? Actually, I do need, I don't know. Say I do need After Effects for something, or Lightroom, which I don't use. Say I want to try Lightroom. Because I pay for a plan that includes it, I can just install it. And if there's an update that's bad, I can go back and install an old version of it, right? So both of these kind of work the same way, that you have access to the whole thing, but you're not required to have them all installed on your machine all the time. And I really like that flexibility.
I get it. And the Adobe Suite is something that I just missed. I never got caught up in it.
Mm-hmm.
In the early days of Photoshop, I would always buy. They had a consumer version. It was like $100.
Yeah,
I forget what it was called, but I used to get that.
it's like Photoshop Express, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. And then I was always a fan of Pixelmator, and I know that there are other vendors also making software like that, but I just like the way Pixelmator is so aggressively Mac, and they really just like use all the Mac features, even more than Adobe does. They are not a subscription company. They sell you the app, you pay for it, and then you own it. And that's always been kind of the stuff I went to for that. And in terms of audio tools, I've only ever really known the Apple suite. And I'll be willing to pay money for a plugin if I need it, but I'm not going to go over to Adobe to do one thing or another. So, so that's that. I just totally missed the Adobe bus throughout my life. My big one, kind of in that category, is the Omni suite. And they don't. I wish they did sell it in a way like Adobe does, where you just have your account and you download what you want. But I am a big fan of the Omni Group. They, full disclosure, they were a sponsor of ours years ago. I mean, it's probably been 5 years or more since they sponsored anything I did. But but I got to know the people there in the process, and they are so passionately Macintosh. They really live and die by this stuff. The Omni Group, they were, at making Next software before they made Mac OS software. So they've kind of been there for the whole journey. They're some of the best productivity app makers, I think, around. I used to say, they're Apple caliber, but I would say now they're better than Apple caliber, because a lot of the Apple stuff just doesn't go as far as their stuff does. So, OmniGraffle, OmniFocus, OmniOutliner, all of that stuff I find uses for constantly, and I just subscribe to it all. And that's one of my big expenses in terms of software every year, is those subscriptions. But I do not regret them a bit.
And which apps from them are you using on a regular basis?
Well, I just recently added OmniPlan because they're developing that. And that one, they're going to give me a free trial on that one. So that one I'm not paying for yet. But if I start using it, one of my rules, by the way, just kind of separate, is even though I'm Fancy Mac Sparky and I have a blog and a podcast, if I use an app under fire, beyond just testing it and talking about it, I pay for it.
Same.
I just don't want to. I just feel like that I need to, and I gotta, you've got to walk the walk, right? So the ones that I use under fire currently are Graffle, Focus, and Outliner. But OmniPlan is making progress. I don't know if I can use it as much. I used to use it as a lawyer a lot, because I would have like litigation plans I would lay out as a Gantt chart, and then I would send it to the client as a PDF. It was almost marketing more than it was anything else. But it was good for that, and they've made a lot of progress on that. But I'm a big fan of OmniFocus, OmniGraffle, and OmniOutliner.
We mentioned Fantastical a little bit earlier, and of course, recently did an episode on that. I'm not a Fantastical user on a regular basis. It's one that I sort of check in on, and it's one for me that falls in the category that we were talking about earlier. It's fantastic. It's right there in the name. But I don't have the need for a lot of the stuff it does, and so I'm not a regular paying person for it. But I know you are, and you use your calendar, as we have discussed, much more intensely than I do. But it seems like you're really happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I am. It's $475 a month billed annually. So, but that's that adds up, for a calendar app. But I use it every day, and I don't go to Starbucks. There's a lot of stuff I don't spend money on, and I'm totally fine spending this extra money, because it gives me so many more features than what I get with Apple's calendar app. I know that's the one you're using, but like appointments, like when people want to meet with me, I hate that email exchange where you say, "Well, I'm available Thursdays after 2 and you're available Friday morning," and you got like 6 emails by the time you get a meeting scheduled. What I do if someone wants a meeting with me is I send them Fantastical has this thing called proposals. So I'm not giving them access to my calendar where they can just pick a time, because that is anathema to me. But instead what I do is I say, here are 3 times, pick one, you know, and I can do that in Fantastical. It reserves the time on my calendar. They get a little link in an email. They click it, and then it automatically updates in the calendar, and their appointment gets set in. The other 2 get deleted, and then the appointment is set, and it's only 1 email for me. And if they say, well, I can't do any of those 3, then I say, okay, well, I'll write you next month. I'll give you some more times. I've got a whole system for this, Stephen. But I'm just not going to spend a bunch of time like programming calendar events. And that's something Fantastical does. They're just always coming up with new features and cool things. I love quarterly planning, and they're the only calendar app that does it. I'll take a little bit of credit for that because I complained about it enough that they finally just put it in to shut me up. Features like that are there. And for that, I'm willing to pay. And I've been paying since they went to a subscription model. I just paid my renewal. And that's one that I don't mind paying for.
Mm-hmm.
I did hear from a lot of people after they raised their prices saying, this is crazy. I can't afford this, or I can't pay it, and I don't think it's worth it. And I think then you shouldn't pay it. I think these software developers need to understand that when you raise prices too high, you're going to lose people. But that also they should understand if they can raise prices higher and people stay, that they expect more. I mean, the system works itself out. I wouldn't get emotional about it,
Yeah.
It's up to them. I mean, if you really feel wound up about it, send them an email and say, hey, I feel like this isn't fair. You're charging too much. But they got a business. Like Fantastical, I happen to know because there's another feature I've been complaining about that now that they're adding. They've got a lot of people working on it. This is not one guy in a corner with a Mac. This is a team building this app out, and they got to pay for all those people.
Mm-hmm. One that's been on my list for a long time is Todoist, which is the task manager that I always come back to. It's one that it's not particularly Mac or even iOS like native feeling. Like it's one of those apps that runs everywhere, and it kind of looks and feels like it runs everywhere. And as I've talked about before, the thing that keeps me there or calls me back when I stray is the natural language processing. That they have a whole system where you can very quickly type something in one box and it knows what list and the priority and the date and the repeating parameters. And that is something that I really value in a task manager. So I keep coming back to it. My wife also uses Todoist. For a while when last year, or I guess earlier this year, whenever I was giving reminders, sort of a long haul test, we moved our shared stuff into reminders, and that's also now back into Todoist because she really also likes it. So it's not the Maciest app here, and it's not the most powerful app in the category by far, but it's the one that clicks with me the most. And so I pay for that annually and have done so for, I don't even know, like 6 or 7 years probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think with a task manager app, you don't want the most complicated one. You want the least complicated one that can work for you.
Yeah.
So if that's it, then go for it. One we both have on our list is Craft, and this one has kind of emerged for me in the last couple of years. I use it just with kind of Team MacSparky. I've got JF and a couple other people that help me out with stuff, and I wanted to have a place where we could have like a source of truth for all the projects. Like if there's a new video for the labs, or if we're working on the field guide or whatever, there is a place you can go to where you can see the current status of that, who is responsible to do something with it. If there's a question about it, you can leave a question for it. And Craft scratches that itch really nicely for me. So I pay for that.
Yeah, I turned to it earlier this year. I took a class over the spring that's mostly wrapped up now, and I wanted a place to have all of the documents and notes and all the material that class generated. And it was absolutely amazing for that. Being able to link to a specific block somewhere else, having really quick formatting. The secret with Craft and a lot of these other apps like Notion as well is the slash command. So you type slash and like you can tell it what you want. You don't have to go digging through the UI to start, this or that sort of formatting. And that is something that once you sort of get into your mind is really pretty quick. And so this class is winding down for me. I still have all my personal notes and Apple Notes and just this stuff in Craft. And so the future of this is a little unknown to me, but using it really heavily over the last 4 or 5 months has been honestly a joy. And it may end up that at some point this summer, depending on what Notes gets at WWDC or got at WWDC as you're listening to this, it may be my go-to for the next year or so, but we'll see.
See, I have notes for my personal stuff and a few things that I don't share with the team because one of the downsides of Craft is when you have a shared database, everybody sees everything. You can't say just one person sees this folder or whatever. And so there's some stuff that I really don't feel comfortable putting in there for everybody. And then there's my personal stuff. And I still feel like Apple Notes integration with the Mac is top. And I just think that's the one for that. But the thing about Craft, because I talked about this in the labs quite a bit and people write me, I think the friction point or the counterpoint to Craft for a lot of people is Notion.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for something where they can put together a team space. Notion is more of a web service than a native app. And as a result, it's more powerful and it's less of a native app, obviously. And for me, Craft is good enough. It has the tools I need. It doesn't allow me to put in, although it has table support, it doesn't have the table support that Notion does. And it doesn't have quite the customization that Notion does. But it has the set I need. And it works flawlessly on iPad and iPhone. And that trade-off is the way I lean for this tool. And but that I hear a lot of people saying, well, do I do Notion or Craft? I think that's where the tipping point is. If you want something more native, maybe a little less powerful, prettier, and easier to use on mobile, go Craft. If you want something more powerful, go over to Notion.
I think that sums it up well.
One we both have on our list is Grammarly.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Grammarly. I never thought I would like a grammar checker, but this thing is really the thing if you do a lot of writing.
Yeah, it definitely is. They've got a free version. I pay for the premium. I use it in a couple different ways. So I use the plugin in Chrome, which is the browser I use, mostly because I do a lot of writing in Neon, which is Relay FM's CMS. I don't write in WordPress for 512. I do that in Mars Edit on the Mac because it's far superior than the web. But I very often, it finds things for me. Grammarly does have a system on the Mac that basically can hook into a lot of text fields on the Mac. And that was a bit much for me. Like I don't need it in messages, So when I'm writing long blog posts, I'll write them in a text editor and then I'll copy them into the Grammarly website and sort of run it there. And then I'll publish it through Mars Edit. So I'm not using it across all the Mac apps. That was just a bit heavy-handed for my taste. But if you want that, you can have Grammarly absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, I just find it gives me recommendations that I routinely accept. Not all of them, but it does make my writing better. And it doesn't take that long to do it. They have a native Mac app, which is terrible. I have never been happy with that app. There's a typing lag. It's just not good.
It's weird.
If you're going to use Grammarly, my recommendation is just go to the website. And like I have a little Keyboard Maestro script I wrote that copies text out of wherever I'm writing, navigates to the website, loads the page, and then drops it in for me. So it's in essence a native app for me. Mm-hmm. But that's my only dig against it. But they just continue to improve upon it. I would also give a shout out to their iPad app because it's a keyboard. And they're using that keyboard implementation. And if you do a lot of writing on your iPad, Grammarly checks on the iPad are really nice too.
One thing I like about it that I was honestly a little bit worried about when I started using it was, is this going to want to conform my writing, like my style, into what the robot wants? And Honestly, I don't think it does. I mean, again, there's some things that it always wants to change that I don't, because I just have certain things that I like to do. But for me, it's much more about catching errors that I wouldn't normally catch. Because anyone who's ever published anything or ever sent an email to their boss knows it's extremely, extremely difficult to catch your own typos. It just is,
Yeah,
because you made them. And so having something that it's like, oh, hey, this subject verb actually doesn't agree, or you used this word, but you meant that word. That's really valuable to me.
absolutely. And it doesn't change your writing. It just helps make it better. They do have voice stuff. As you know, large language models improve. This is obviously an implementation of that, much more limited than something like ChatGPT, but it is kind of the same underlying technology. And it will start making recommendations. A lot of those I ignore, and some of it you can even tell Grammarly, don't do this anymore. I don't care. I'm going to write in my voice. But it does catch little things that you just don't want to miss. And I even run it before, when I know I have someone editing my work. I still run Grammarly on it before I share it with the editor.
Yeah. The newest one for me in this category is MimeStream. This is a Mac OS app that is a Gmail client. It is not yet a client that works with IMAP or, iCloud email. Some of that is coming. They have this big thing on the webpage. You can see what's coming, which I think is really cool. MimeStream was in beta for a couple of years, and it's written by this guy, Neil, who worked on mail at Apple. And now he's doing this. And if you use Gmail, and all three of my email accounts are either Gmail or Google Workspaces for work, it is lightweight and fast, and it brings in a bunch of features from Gmail specifically that Apple Mail doesn't necessarily do. And it just exited beta like 2 weeks ago, and it's going to be $50 a year, and they have multi-user groups. So if you have, say you want to buy it for everyone in your company, you can do that. You can pay monthly as well if you just want to check it out. But I've been so happy with it in beta that I immediately signed up. I was like, I felt bad. Like you said earlier, we get to test a lot of stuff, and if we use it for realsies, we pay for it. You and I share that philosophy. I felt that way about this. I was like, I've run this for so long, and even in beta, like there were things that weren't there, but it never did anything wrong, right? It was just like, oh, it's incomplete. I immediately signed up, and I absolutely love it. There are still a few features I wish it had. Mainly, I'd like to be able to move a message in between accounts, because I'm a bit finicky about, okay, if something came to my relay email, but really it's a 512 thing, I actually want to store it in the archive of my 512 email. It just makes more sense to me. Can't do that in MimeStream. I've talked to him about it. I think it's going to happen. But if you use Gmail and you use a Mac, you should at least give it a try. It's a 14-day trial. I've just been so happy with it. I jumped on this the second that I saw that it was out of beta.
Yeah, and I feel like this is an example of what I was talking about earlier. It's an app where the developers are passionate about it. They made it a subscription so they can continue to work on it. It's like the Walt Disney quote, we make movies so they can be successful and give us enough money to make another movie. That was his philosophy. And I love that. That's my same philosophy for field guides. I boosted that from Walt. But you make these things, so hopefully they're good enough that you get the privilege to make another one. And that's the feeling these guys seem to have about this app. If I use Google Mail, there's no question, because every time I play with Google Mail, you have to choose, are you going to have all the cool Google features, or are you going to have a Mac app? Because you don't get both.
Yeah.
This gives you both.
Yeah, exactly. And again, they have that roadmap. I'll put that in the show notes. You can check that out of things that they plan on adding. And I think one of those is, at the very least, they've talked about, is it JMap? Is that what your email provider uses? I'm trying to remember. But it's like a fast mail thing. Like they are looking at other things beyond Gmail eventually. And eventually it's going to come to the iPhone and iPad as well, which will be sweet.
I would love for them to support Fastmail. That's just all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I have my own email problems. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
Another productivity app I use every day that I pay for is Drafts, and more than happy to. It is. I've tried alternatives. I keep playing with the other people in the space. I always come back to Drafts. If I just want to open up my Mac or iPhone or iPad and just start writing something, it's Drafts. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by NetSuite. Go to netsuite.com/MPU for the leading integrated cloud business software suite. You get a one-of-a-kind financing offer with no interest and no payments for 6 months. Being a business owner or working closely with business owners means knowing your numbers. If your business earns millions or maybe tens of millions in revenue, stop what you're doing and take a listen, because NetSuite by Oracle has just rolled out the best offer. NetSuite gives you the visibility and control you need to make better decisions faster. And for the first time in NetSuite's 22 years as the #1 cloud financial system, you can defer payments of a full NetSuite implementation for 6 months. That's no payment and no interest for 6 months, and you can take advantage of this special financing offer today. So why is NetSuite #1? Well, they give your business everything you need in real time, all in one place, to reduce the manual processes, boost efficiencies, build forecasts, and increase productivity across every department. I know as a business owner what a difference that can make and how much easier everything operates when information is available. It really means smart decisions can be made faster. This NetSuite offer is extraordinary, so join the 33,000 companies who have already upgraded to NetSuite and gained visibility and control over their financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. If you've been sizing NetSuite up to make the switch, then you know this deal is unprecedented. No interest, no payments. Take advantage of this special financing offer at netsuite.com/MPU. That's netsuite.com/MPU to get the visibility and control you need to weather any storm. netsuite.com/MPU. And our thanks to NetSuite for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM.
So let's get into some other apps that we are using via subscription. Some of these, like you said earlier, the productivity versus other, we just needed a way to divide it into the show format. And we definitely have some overlap here. I kind of put mine in order of the amount that I use it. And for me, at the top of the list, there is Day One, the journaling app. It used to be independent. Now it's owned by Automatic. We did a big episode on Day One a few years ago, but it continues to be where I journal. Even if I journal in a paper notebook, I'll take a picture of it and put it in Day One. And I've got a couple of journals in there set up. We've talked about our setups before, but I got a couple in there, and I absolutely adore this app. And I think they've done a good job over the years at adding features. You can have it all encrypted. You can have it across all your devices. So I have it on, my Mac, iPhone, and iPad. They have their own sync engine, but it works really, really well. I've never had any data issues with Day One. It's just a good example, I think, for me of like a really well done app in the Apple ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, I get emails from people all the time asking, can I do it in Obsidian? Can I do it in Craft? Where should I journal? And my answer is always just use Day One. It's built for that. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it so great. You can print it out as a book. You can have different journals for different topics. If you put a picture into it, it matches the date to the picture. There's just so much I like about Day One, and it's all end-to-end encrypted. And I feel like the stewardship to Automatic, I can't think of a better company to own it. And if you want to journal, just use the app that's made for journaling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both Obsidian and Craft have the daily note feature. And I've looked at it in Craft, but all those features you mentioned are why I like Day One. My favorite feature, actually, and it's silly, but it's me, so I'm just going to go with it. When you have the photo or the date, like that metadata, the metadata includes the weather. And for some reason, that just always tickles me that if I have a photo from like last year's pumpkin patch that we took our kids to, I can see that it was 65 degrees and cloudy. And like for some reason, that makes the memory all that more vivid for me. Just a little thing, but not something that you can do easily in a daily note in some other app. It's just those little features tailored to journaling are what make it so sweet.
Yeah, so I guess we both like Day One. Another one that I pay for that's pretty important to me is Obsidian. Now, Obsidian is generally a free app. You can pay for it if you want.
Hmm.
Their model's a little weird, right? But they have additional features you can buy, and you pay for them. And one of them is their sync engine, and the other one is their publish engine. So the sync engine is an end-to-end encrypted, brain dead sync system for Obsidian. So if you use Obsidian, you want to sync your data, you can pay them to do it. Now, you don't have to. You could put it in Dropbox or even iCloud. But I like the idea of that encryption involved with it. And I also like the fact that it's just drop dead easy. And because when you sync it through Obsidian Sync, you don't put it on a cloud server on your devices. So that means it's local data. So for automation purposes, it's also very easy to address. So there's a lot of good reasons, but I pay for Obsidian Sync. I also pay for Obsidian Publish. Not everybody needs that, but if you have an Obsidian page you want to share on the internet, you can do that.
Hmm.
And so I give them money every year. And it's also one of those things where I really like the app and I want them to continue to make the app.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. One that's hung around a really long time for me is Due, Due. This is the reminder app, mostly on the iPhone, although there is a Mac version that will remind you incessantly until you finish something. I use it for exactly one thing, and it's medication. With health, last year they added medication reminders, but it's just a regular notification. It's not a sticky notification. It doesn't repeat every 15 minutes till you do it. So if you don't do it immediately, it kind of gets lost in your notifications. And I found that just wasn't working for me. And so with Due being able to remind me incessantly to do something, that was important to me. And it works really well. And the in-app purchase, I mean, I can't think of I can think of few things my phone does more important than remind me to take my medication every day.
Yeah, that one is on my question mark list. I have an active subscription for it because I've paid for it, but I have not been using it.
Mm-hmm.
I have been using the medication stuff on the watch, and that's been fine. And I'm probably not going to renew that one because I just don't find that I use that much. It's great at what it does, but I just don't feel like I need it.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
One that I am not willing to part with, however, is Readwise, and that's come up on this show many times. But if you read books on Kindle, you should really look at Readwise because it syncs your highlights and gives you spaced repetition. Every morning, one of the things I do is I read 10 highlights from books that I've read over the years, and I love it. And Readwise makes all that possible. In addition, and we're going to maybe do some content on this, they're making their own reader app that's very powerful. And they're really, again, kind of like MimeStream, they're developing a future around the product. It is an app and system built to help make things better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the developers are really invested in it. So I really like the future of the product, but I also really like the present as to the ability to get that spaced repetition on my highlights. And it also syncs with Obsidian. It does all the little things I need.
Yeah. When I think about Sparky apps, Readwise to the top of the list. Like it is, they have a picture of you in their office somewhere. I think. Like, what would David do? He wants this feature.
Yeah, it's funny because I heard about it and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend money on a thing that's just going to get my highlights out of my Kindle books. But oh man, it's so good. And then like I read some paper books too. Chris Bailey sent me his new book. It was a paper version, and I went in Readwise and I put the highlights in Readwise because it's just so good. Yeah.
One that we both have on our list, and another one we've talked about in the past, is Timery, the time tracking app that works with Toggle. This is one that I'm on his beta basically continuously, but I pay for a membership because I want him to be successful in this. It would wreck my world if something happened to Timery. It's running right now. I can see on my second screen, my MPU timer has been running for an hour and 20 minutes. And I do not want to use the Toggle website. I do not want to use the Toggle app. Timery is a beautiful front end for it, and it is it's the best timer app in the Apple ecosystem for sure.
There's a little one that I thought I would only subscribe to for 1 year, but I keep renewing it every year because I like it. It's called Picture This. And all it does is I can take a picture of any plant I see in the world and it identifies it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And because I have a little bit of gardening that I do, and I'm always looking for interesting plants that I can plant at my house. Our climate is not very wet, so we have to be very careful. But as I'm going around California, I see plants that seem to be thriving in my climate, and I say, "Oh, that's kind of nice." And I take a picture of it, and then I can figure out what it is and whether or not I want to try and plant one at my house. And also sometimes just out of curiosity, even when I'm traveling, I take pictures of plants. And this app will, take a picture of a leaf and you'll know what kind of tree it is or what kind of plant it is. I don't think many people are interested in this that listen to our show, but this one makes me happy.
Yeah, this is one that you've mentioned it before, and I've shared it with my wife, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm all over that." So you got her at least.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
it is really cool. It is really cool.
It's a weird name, right? It's a plant identifier, but it's called Picture This. I feel like they kind of dropped the ball on the name.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree. An app that goes in this category for me that I think is honestly too cheap is Parcel, which is a delivery tracking app. I used deliveries for a long time, and it's sort of kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. Parcel also does this cool trick where it integrates with your Amazon account, so things automatically show up there. I think Parcel is like $4.99 a year, which I use this thing like weekly at least, if not more. It's fantastic. It is one of those things I was talking about earlier. It's across all of the ecosystem: iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, push notifications, widgets, everything you could want to track your packages. This thing does, including Siri support on the Apple Watch. Like, you say track package and then give it the name of the package, and the watch will just tell you where it is. Like, I love that this developer is using every single inch of the ecosystem that they can, and for $4.99 a year, it's a quick spend for me.
Yeah, and it's funny because that space was so occupied by what was the name of the app that everybody used before Parcel?
Deliveries.
Deliveries. I mean, Deliveries had the space, and to displace one that everybody's already sold on, they really had to bring their A game, and they did. I'm using Parcel too.
I think a lot of people have made that switch.
Yeah, I have also been using for a couple of years now. David underscores Widgetsmith. I really like what he's done with it. He's a friend, but I pay for his app, and I don't use it for everything. But when I do need to wind up a cool little widget, and I also use it the watch version, what they call it, Watchsmith. Yeah, Watchsmith. So I have both of those, and I think it's really cool to be able to kind of customize my widgets. I wish Apple would allow him to make watch face smith,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't do that yet. But we'll get there.
Yeah, Widgetsmith is great. I told him this, but we gave our daughter her first iPhone recently, and she runs Widgetsmith and has a bunch of widgets she made, and not because I told her about it, and not because like I was friends with the developer, right? It
Yeah,
was circulating in the 7th grade at her school that Widgetsmith is the way to do widgets on your iPhone. So I told him all this, and he was very very happy to hear that. Obviously, another one that I've mentioned that is relatively new for me is Sports Alerts. This is an app that basically it's like a bunch of other sports score apps. You can see what's going on in your favorite teams or the conferences you follow or whatever, but it has excellent live activity support. So I can get a notification saying, "Hey, the Memphis Tigers play in 15 minutes." And if I'm not going to be watching it in person or on TV, I can say, "Yes, start a live activity," and I can keep up with it. They are doing this better than I think anyone else. There are a couple other sports apps that have added live activities, but overall it's been pretty slow. And they were out there first, and so I subscribed for a year. And this is one that I am going to continue to see how it goes. Like if there are some less expensive alternatives, or even if Apple gets into it, which they kind of said they would. Like there's some sports stuff in the latest version of iOS 16, but it's not great. This is one that I'm definitely not married to forever. But for now, it's doing its job. And that job is, beautiful live activity. So I can see what's going on with my sports teams.
yeah, cool. one that I've been subscribing to now for a couple of years that I really like is called Food Noms,
Hmm.
and it's a food tracker. If you want to track what you eat, this is the one. There were a bunch of others of these, but they all seemed like they were big and they had marketing plans and cross promotional nonsense, and I felt like there are a lot of people in suits and fancy shoes running those apps. Food Noms just tracks your food and it tells you how much you've ate, and it does a great job, and it's got a pretty UI. I think it's got a really small development team, maybe just one person, but it works perfectly fine without all the other nonsense. And I've been subscribing to that one now for a couple of years.
Yeah, this is one that's kind of been on my list to check out, and I just need to find some time to dive in. It looks spectacular, and a lot of its competitors not well designed, right? Some of these other apps in this category just don't look that great, or seem to be really pushing things that I don't necessarily want in an app like this.
Yeah.
So I think this is sort of a good example of like, we do this thing, we do it really well, it's well designed, and that I appreciate. Another relatively newcomer for me is Ivory. This is the Mastodon client by the folks who made Tweetbot. Of course, Tweetbot is no more. Ivory is available on the Mac, iPhone, and iPad. You can do an in-app purchase that subscribes you to both the mobile and the desktop version. The Mac version is pretty new; it only came out a couple of weeks ago, but you can get both through one subscription. They also have two levels. They have basically, I think they call them like silver and gold. Eventually, those I think will have some differences in terms of features. Right now, I think it's mostly good feelings, which is fine. For me, Mastodon replaced Twitter basically entirely. And I think it's true for a lot of people. And I loved Tweetbot. To me, Tweetbot was Twitter. And so to have that same experience with a new service is fantastic. It feels like nothing really ever changed. And they've done a lot of work to bring in Mastodon specific things. And they're being very open, just like MimeStream. They have a roadmap on their website. Paul and those guys are active on Mastodon talking to users, taking suggestions, saying things they may or may not do, right? They're not going to take every suggestion. They seem to be pretty honest about that. And I think that's another part of this. I want to know what these developers are thinking, and how they communicate is important to me, not only as a member of the press, but as a user of these applications. And so Ivory's another one that I'm on their beta, at least on the iPhone, but I paid for, and I will probably move off the beta onto the public releases at some point. But if you are on Mastodon, there are a lot of other good alternatives. But if you were a Tweetbot fan, then this is basically the drop-in replacement.
Yeah, see, I've signed up for it, but I may unsubscribe this one just because I just haven't been doing any of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I barely use Twitter, and this has nothing to do with Twitter's management. I just was barely using it anyway.
Mhm.
And then a lot of my friends with the Mastodon, so I set up a Mastodon account. I think do you call it a tweet? What do you call it?
A post.
I did a post say, "Hey, I'm here," and I think that was the last thing I did. I'll have to look, but yeah, so I just don't use it much. I'm trying to focus that kind of time into the labs Discord, the
Mhm.
Relay Discord, the MPU forums. I'm being more self-selective about the people I do social media with.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I don't know. It's not like one of those big announcements. I'm quitting Twitter. I
Right.
don't want to do that, but I just find I don't seem to be able to make time for that stuff. So maybe I don't need an app. We'll see.
Yeah, the Mastodon website, especially on mobile, is pretty good. And there are other alternatives, right? There are several straight up free Mastodon clients, or ones that would be a lot less if you just need to check in every once in a while. And there are clients out there that do more to support some of the weirdness of Mastodon, because you have a bunch of different servers, right? And if someone's on your server or not on your server, that means different things. And Ivory's been a little slow to adopt some of those things, whereas some of the other options out there have been faster. That probably doesn't matter to you because I think you're on mastodon.social, which is the big one. But I run my own. It's just me and 512 pixels, right? So I run into this sometimes like, oh, I can't do this thing because I'm on a little server by myself.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of alternatives out there. And I think, Like over at Mac Stories, they've written about several of them. So if you're looking for a Mastodon client, there are a bunch of good options. For me, it's like I want the Tweetbot experience. Sign me up.
Another one I pay for is Pushcut. If you do automation or listen to the Automators podcast, you'll know more about that one. It like turns an iOS device into a server for automation, which is run by Rosemary Orchard at this point. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was excited to see that.
She talked about it so long, and then now she took it over. So
She took it over.
Good for
It's
her.
in good hands.
Yeah, it's going to get better. Of course, it's Rose, guys. It's going to get better. But
Yeah,
that's another one I pay for.
Okay. I've got one that is actually something I'm trying out for my travel. So we had WWDC, and then I'm on this family trip, and I'm going to Chicago a little bit later in the summer. And so I've been playing with Tripsy. This is an app that you can use to manage your travel. It does this cool thing where you can forward emails to like a private email account, and it figures out what's in them and then puts it in your travel planner. This is something that I had on my list to check out several years ago, but then it didn't go anywhere for several years. And so when travel has started back up, Mike Hurley reminded me of this. He's a big Tripsy fan. I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And coming off of WWDC, I think, we're recording this before I went, but having it all in one place that's not an Apple Note has been pretty sweet. You can go in there and see your flights. I can see my hotel reservation. If I'd rented a car, that would have been in there. You can put events in there. And this is kind of like Flighty, which is another one that I have paid for on and off over the years. There's a really nice flight tracking app where this is probably not something I'm going to pay for all the time, but during the summer in particular, when most of my travel is, this may be something that I do on a monthly basis, and then let it expire and then come back to it if I have another batch of travel. So Tripsy and Flighty both are kind of in that bucket for me, but both are beautiful. Both are really clever in what they do. There's obviously some overlap with the flight tracking stuff. I think Flighty's the best in the App Store with that. But both are very handy, I think, if you're spending a lot of time away from home.
Yeah, agreed. I've used it occasionally in the past, but I don't currently have a subscription to that one. I'm doing a trial right now with SparkMail.
Okay.
We talked earlier about mail. Email has become kind of a friction point for me, as it is for everybody, right? And I'm just trying to figure out a better solution for it. Part of it is the volume of mail I get. Part of it is like a better way to handle customer support stuff. And like SparkMail has that feature where you can have another account with someone and you can share mail across it. So that would be good for some customer support requests. Like I could have someone else kind of handle it, but I could be involved. But my first level of this is just, do I not hate the app, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because mail apps, like when you're looking for a significant other, spouse, you want someone you love. But when it comes to a mail app, you just want something you don't hate because you're not going to love any of them. That's my experience, at least. But so I installed Spark a week ago, and I went ahead and subscribed to it because I need to use it for like a month or two before I really know that I don't hate it, because they've got a completely different paradigm for email, which may be good. I'm not sure. I'm giving it a try. So that one is kind of on my temporary list right now.
Okay. Yeah, I know Mike and Carrie use it at Relay for that exact thing. Like we can get an inbound sales email and they can talk. Like they don't have to take it to Slack. They don't have to like forward an email around. You can assign an email to somebody or talk about it in a sidebar. And the other person in the email chain has no idea any of that's happened, right? They don't know that you took their email and sent it to somebody else. They may be upset if they knew that. So it's all within Spark. And that is such a clever feature. I would have loved to have been in the room when that came up. It's like, yes, this is gold. And if that's how you work collaboratively at email, there's really nothing that does it the way Spark does. I think it's super clever.
Well, actually, there are some really great services out there, but they're bigger and there's more. They even take it to the next level, but they're quite expensive and they're way overkill for what I need. I mean, I'm dealing with people like that just need a tax receipt or something. It's just, it's not that big of a deal. But if I could have a way to independently just put that off to Leilani and she could understand what needs to be done. I don't know. I feel like that might be the solution. But like I said, at first, I just need to work with it a little bit because, me giving up on, some other Apple Mail app or some other mail application like MailMate, I'm not sure I want to do that, So I'm just trying to figure out if me and Spark can get along.
Sure.
If we can cohabitate.
Yeah.
So I subscribed. And like you were saying earlier, I'm not giving them $300 to buy the app and a huge license. I'm paying for a couple months and then I'll know, whether or not this is going to work out or not.
A couple other ones, I think, just to run through quickly for me, things that we've talked about on the show a lot. Carrot Weather is definitely at the top of my list. Weather apps have to pay for their data. It is not free, even if they're using WeatherKit, Apple's thing. Apple charges for that data, and that data is expensive. And so weather apps are really one that I think benefit from the business model change, because if they were charging you once, they had to charge you enough to pay for your weather data for an unspecified amount of time. And so Carrot Weather does get constant updates, and it does take advantage of all the ecosystem, but I'm also paying for the data that it provides. And I happily do so.
That is my fantastic hell for, it's like, I don't know if I need that good of a weather app, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Apple Weather app has got a lot better and it has a lot of very up-to-date information. It's not as good as Carrot Weather, but I have a question mark next to it because when it comes time for renewal, am I getting enough out of the weather app? Living in Southern California where we don't have kind of extreme weather,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I need it. So that one I'm not sure about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And a lot of people probably don't. And Apple's weather app has gotten way better over the years, especially with iOS 16. They bought Dark Sky, and WeatherKit came out of that, as did the sort of re-infusion of features into Apple's app. So for a lot of people, it's more than enough.
One we both have is Dark Noise.
Yeah.
And we did a whole show on it. So we don't need to say much more, but Dark Noise is cool and we pay for it.
Yep. That's it's very good. Very, very good.
Another one that I pay for is Controller for HomeKit. It's a great little app that gives you better features than HomeKit and a better user interface. If you use HomeKit a lot, check it out. Yes. That one's come up on our show before too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my plans for later in the year is to play with some more home automation stuff. So that one is like saved in good links for future use.
Yeah. We'll do a show on that because there's a lot to say there.
Okay. The last one for me is GIF Wrapped. This is an application that lets you basically manage a GIF library, which is something that I tend to do. I sync it with Dropbox. You can search for GIFs. It has a iMessage app, and it's basically the only iMessage app I use. So I can pull from my library and send something to somebody. It's been around for quite a while. It's made by a friend of mine, Daniel. But it is a lot of fun, and being able to like save things from a search into the library, like all those features are there. It's just a lot of fun, and it's one that I am happy to pay for because I do send goofy gifts to my friends basically all the time.
Yeah, another one I just got again as a 1-year trial was Raycast. Raycast now has gone to a consumer subscription model.
Yeah,
and I am still on the Alfred train. But I can see that Raycast is doing interesting things, and I want to be able to play with both of them over the next year. This is a Mac Sparky thing, really, more than a making a choice thing. And so I went ahead and bought a year Raycast when they announced it, and I'm actively using both of those against each other right now.
Okay. Yeah, I know one of the features I think that's in that subscription is syncing across multiple computers, which is so critical when you're using something like a launcher, right? You want that to be the same everywhere.
And we have not mentioned it all through the show today, but, I think the big subscription is Setapp. They're occasionally a sponsor of the show, so be warned, I guess. But for your $9.99 a month, you get just a host of applications, and I'm a subscriber. I use a bunch of apps on it. I'm constantly finding new ones. We could almost do a whole show on Setapp apps that we use. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today, but that is a subscription service as well that I find worthwhile.
Yeah, and because it gives you access to so many things, it can kind of eat other subscriptions for you, which is cool.
Yeah, there are apps that I unsubscribe to because I'm getting them on set app. Yes.
This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by BZG Apps, makers of Unite for macOS, which is not just another app. It's a powerful tool that allows you to transform any website into a full-fledged, customizable, and isolated application on your Mac. With Unite's lightweight WebKit browser technology, you can streamline your online tools to increase your productivity and reduce distractions. Unite's recognition is far-reaching, with features by Apple at their events and endorsements from a bunch of leading tech publications like The Verge, Mac Rumors, Tidbits, 9to5Mac, and a little website called 512 Pixels. They really are committed to making your online experience seamless. You can unleash your creativity with Unite and create a tailored Twitter client resistant to sudden changes, or create a sleek status bar app for ChatGPT or Bing. You can even experience Gmail or Google Meet as efficient native apps, reducing the need for resource-intensive browsers. Or maybe you want to enhance your privacy and security by creating an isolated environment for platforms that might track you. There's really something for everyone here. Music enthusiasts can enjoy a status bar app for Apple Music or Overcast, while designers and traders can have their Figma or Robinhood applications right on their desktops. Unlike other providers, Unite apps are efficient and customizable, allowing you to tailor your workspace to your needs. You can enjoy a wealth of features like link forwarding, ad blocking, native notifications, password management, and more, all within the isolated environment of your Unite app. Plus, with a one-time license and no recurring subscription, you can enjoy these benefits indefinitely. Exclusive to the Mac Power Users community, there's a 20% discount on any Unite license for the next week. Visit bzgapps.com/MacPowerUsers to make the most of this opportunity and to revolutionize how you work on your Mac today. Once again, that's bzgapps.com/MacPowerUsers. There's also a link in the show notes. You're going to get 20% off any Unite license. That's pretty sweet. Our thanks to BZG Apps for their support of the show and Relay FM.
Okay, let's talk about the cloud services we subscribe to, because yes, we do give money to those people too.
Yeah.
I guess the one both of us share is Apple One. That's the big one from Apple.
Mm-hmm. It's the one that combines like 6 subscriptions. So you have iCloud Plus, which is additional storage, and TV Plus, music, arcade, fitness, news, all those things rolled into one. They have a couple of different options. They have individual, family, and then Premier, which is where I ended up because I like Fitness Plus. If it weren't for that, I could save myself $10 a month. But then I see the iCloud storage, and I'm back at the Premier, right? Because I think my family's at 1.1 terabytes of iCloud space. You can do iCloud space separately. This is one I think in particular, it's best just to sit down and look at what you are spending now and look at what bundle makes sense. You may end up saving money doing it some other way. So I think this one in particular is worth that exercise. And yeah, it's great. We have iCloud family sharing, so everyone has access to all of this stuff. We share that iCloud space. Everyone has access to Apple Music and those other things. And it's just all, comes out just once a month. And that is nicer than piecemealing it together. And for me, doing it together actually was a little bit cheaper for the things that I wanted. I don't particularly care about Apple News Plus or Apple Arcade, so they're in for the ride, but that's fine.
Yeah, me too. I do think Apple could do a better job explaining what you get. And the storage element in particular is confusing. Like, how do I get more storage, but this plan? So I feel like Apple could do a better job on that. But I can tell you, we have 4 terabytes of storage, and we have 246 gigabytes left. I'm looking at this right now. So we, the problem is as your kids get better phones, they take a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
And there it goes. And I have 2 terabytes of documents. So that's on me.
Hmm.
I've got to like cull the herd here, but I like to keep a lot of stuff in iCloud. I guess overall, what do you think of iCloud? I know you're sometimes a little bit hesitant to use their storage.
Yeah, I'm still not you really using iCloud Drive all that much. Although it is something that I reevaluate every couple of years because I also pay for Dropbox, the family plan, because Mary also has some need for some cloud storage stuff. And I look at that sometimes like, well, is that something I could downsize on the Dropbox side of things? The big thing that keeps me on Dropbox though is shared work folders. I have a billion of them, and
Yeah,
moving all that to iCloud Drive means moving a lot of people to iCloud Drive that probably don't want to do it. And so while I don't use iCloud Drive really, I don't really use that storage space that way. I guess it's available for the times that I do need it. Um, but for me, the storage is much more about photos, like you said, than anything else.
yeah, I agreed. And I also have Dropbox, partly for work, where we share a lot of stuff between us. Also with the JF, the person who does a lot of the work for me on some of the field guides and the labs videos. He does a lot of editing, so we share very large files back and forth. And Dropbox is really good for that. I do wish there was a way for me to just greatly expand my iCloud storage and then experiment with the idea of just going on the one platform. Apple kind of just decided, 4 terabytes is as much as you're ever going to need, so we're never going to offer you more. And I think that's kind of a mistake, especially with the way, pick their cameras and their phones take big files now. So
Hmm.
we are going to need more storage. So that's a bit of a thing in motion for me. So I either need to, based on how much storage I have left on iCloud, I need to start moving more stuff into Dropbox or figure out a way to, get some stuff off the cloud. But that's something I need to work on. But I am using both iCloud or Apple One and Dropbox. And I don't have a family account. I just have an individual account with
Hmm.
Dropbox.
Yeah, Dropbox is good that you can just add storage. I'm sure there is an upper limit, but I don't know what it is. I mean, I've never
Yeah.
really bumped into that. I've got currently 2.1 terabytes on my account. I'm using 1.4
Yeah.
on Dropbox. If you had told me 15 years ago that, I would be
Yeah. I
like,
know.
what are you talking about?
Or that like I'm going to run out at 4 terabytes.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. I was like, that's infinite amount of data. It's really
Yeah.
not. It really isn't once you get more people in there.
Yeah. And they are all actively taking pictures. One of them is probably taking a picture at this moment and taking up more of the storage. Another one we share is we both use Backblaze.
Yeah.
They were a sponsor years ago, but I feel like they're the best solution for a Mac if you want to do a cloud-based backup. And I just run it on my main Mac, my desktop laptop, as you would say. And so it's always running. It's always got that. It's kind of the belt and suspenders method of backup. But if everything really goes, in trouble for me, the Backblaze will be my savior. I pay
Yeah.
$50 a year for it, and I don't think twice.
Yeah, I've got it set up on my computer and my wife's computer. Both of us have MacBook Pros. I obviously ran it on more machines in the past when I was living the multiple Mac lifestyle, but I've given that up. And yeah, it is the belt and suspenders, right? It is the safety net if something really bad happens. I know my data is elsewhere, even though most of my data is on Dropbox or iCloud. Not everything is. And if I need my whole system back, if an asteroid hits my property and my house and studio are gone, I can ring them up and get a drive and have all my stuff back. And that is well worth the $6 or $7 a month that it does now.
Yeah, and I would also recommend this is a great solution if you're sending kids off to college.
Yes.
Because they are not going to back up. And you put this on their machine, and they're getting backed up. You've got a couple more, though.
Yeah, I got a couple of work specific things. I mentioned it earlier talking about MimeStream, but I do have Google Workspace both for Relay FM. We have several people with Relay email addresses, and I also have it for myself for Hackett Technical Media, which owns 512 Pixels and a couple other things I do, kind of an umbrella for other stuff, mostly for the branded email. And Of course, at Relay, we also use Google Drive, uh, mostly Docs and Sheets, but we do use Google Drive for some things. And it is really something I've never really looked at reevaluating because it works really well for us, and it's pretty affordable to have basically the Gmail world, but with your branded email. When iCloud Plus came out, where you could do your domain stuff, we never really looked at that. This works for us, and it's not something that would easily be changed, and I'm totally fine with that. And then at Relay, we also pay for Slack. Slack you can use for free. We wanted some features that are paid, so the company pays Slack a few $100s every month because we have like 45 people or something in the Slack now. But it is our office, right? We don't pay for a building. We don't have plumbing and electrical and a break room. We have Slack. And so when I view it through that lens, it's totally acceptable to me to pay whatever it is, $300 a month for all those people. We could move to something like Discord or something else, but really what's nice about Slack is the integration with other tools. And so our sales CRM can pipe information into Slack. The service that monitors the website and tells me if we're down or if we're having an outage, that all gets piped into there. Lots of stuff. And there's lots of rooms that people have made that, for various projects and shows. And it just worked well for us. It's really been the Relay office almost since day one. And it's like, it has worked. If I'm at work, Slack is open. And it has served our community really well over the years.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the Google Drive element. One of my daughters attends UCLA, and when she signed up, went to orientation, they said, hey, get a UCLA Google email, and then you get free Google storage for life.
Nice.
I don't know if that'll be true or not.
Yeah.
But she is using the heck out of it, and just telling me the other day how stable it is and how happy she's been with it. And she does like massive file sharing with the kind of work she does, and it's all on that Google educational account. So yeah, it's just one more example of where Google's eating Apple's lunch in the education system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Apple doesn't really have anything that competes with them in this area. And that's a little concerning to me. iCloud is fantastic, but it's not what this is, right? A lot of people just want to open a browser and type into a document. And iCloud.com does that, I guess, but not nearly as well. And Google has just totally taken over this space for a lot of people. And it's also why a lot of schools use Chromebooks, because it all just plugs in and works. And that's something somewhere else that Apple is struggling against them a little bit, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Apple does it, but they don't really do it. If you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch topics to entertainment. And the thing that stands out from our outline is that for someone who claims to not watch much TV, I have a lot of entertainment subscriptions.
You've got more in here than I do. I was surprised.
Yeah, I know. Well, we've got, of course, Disney.
Yeah.
And there's two versions of that. There's the Disney, and then there's the Disney plus Hulu plus ESPN. We just have the Disney plus, not the full enchilada. But we use it a lot. I mean, Daisy and I are big Disney fans. We watch a lot of stuff on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got the bundle because I wanted Hulu and ESPN plus. My university where I went, their athletic department is on ESPN plus. They have the rights to all their stuff, and it's nice having Hulu so we can watch live TV or a couple shows we keep up with. And so for me, I think it's an extra $3 a month to add ESPN plus, like that was fine with me. And I've been happy with it. There's a lot of talk always about like what's going to happen to Hulu. No one seems to want to own Hulu. We'll just see. I think at some point they're going to merge. Maybe they've already announced it. Who knows?
Yeah, I think Disney, because Disney has the right to purchase the rest of it, I believe. Yeah. So I think it's very likely Disney's going to scoop that up. So,
I think that's probably true.
Netflix and HBO, which is now called Max, right?
Yeah,
those are the family ones for me.
Okay.
Like I in the last year for both of those services, I sent out a family text saying, "Hey, I think I'm going to just cancel those I can't think of the last time I watched either one of them.
Hmm.
And my family came for me with the long knives.
Hmm.
So it's that we've got that because I have a wife and two adult children. So I don't know what they watch. I don't know what's on those networks, but I have them.
Yeah. This is one that I pay for depending on what's going on. So I was paying for it for a couple of months to watch the last season of Succession, which just ended. And so I went in and I said, don't renew this. And if there's some, I'm this way with a lot of media streaming, like AMC Plus, I've paid for at certain times to watch something, So this one is out of my rotation now, but it is. I know a lot of people do like it, and they just went through a merger with Discovery and Time. That's a very messy history there, but it's now just called Max, which I think was dumb. I don't know why you took HBO out of the name, but it is there for a lot of people.
Yeah, that show Succession is like where a bunch of people are arguing about an old guy's fortune. Isn't that what it is? Something like that? Like an old guy's messing with his kids.
Yeah, that's the basis of it. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
I
much it.
can't imagine watching that. That sounds to me like I'm definitely more of a Ted Lasso kind of guy at this point in my life. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's part of my problem is a lot of the shows I like don't have much drama in them. So
Hmm.
they're not going to get made. The one that I do, another one I have for a member of my family is my wife loves Hallmark movies. That is like her drug. She just loves watching them. She, as she explains to me, I know what I'm getting into. I can put it on and do stuff around the house, and I'm perfectly happy. But I want it on. So when I wanted to cancel cable, that was her one condition that I find the Hallmark channel for her.
Hmm.
And there's a service called Friendly. I think it's about $80 a year, and it's the best $80 I'm spending a year. Of all
Hmm.
the stuff I've talked about today, making my wife happy, that's the one.
Yeah.
And it gets her Hallmark and it gets her a couple other networks, and it also has the ability to like record them on your account. So I don't know how they do it on the back end, but you say, I want to watch this, later, and it records it for you, but it keeps them for like 90 days. So like we are watching Hallmark Christmas movies every year until the end of March, and but she has it's like a constant stream in her life, and she loves. And if there's someone in your life or you love the Hallmark Channel and you want to get that, check out Friendly.
Yeah. You should see if that's on Hulu. You may be able to save a little money if you did the Disney Hulu bundle.
I have already found out she's investigated it, and they have some on Hulu, but they don't have everything, and she
Okay.
wants it all.
Okay.
So
One that is on the chopping block for me, but not my family. So this is like Max in your household.
yeah,
Honestly, is Netflix. It was the crown jewel for so long, and if it were up to me, I would treat it like I do some of the others. Like, oh, there's a new Netflix show I want to watch. I would, pay for it for a couple of months and watch the show and then turn it off. I've not gotten my family to agree to this. There's especially a lot of kids stuff on there that the family likes, and so I feel a little bit stuck with Netflix. Even though if it were up to me, it would see the curb.
no, I'm the same way. I tried to get rid of Netflix too, and they came at me. So I'm paying for those, but yeah, I could cut them today, and I would not miss them, but they would. One that I am there's two actually that I get for myself. One is Curiosity Stream,
Okay.
and it's just a ton of documentaries.
Yeah.
It's like all documentaries, and it's very inexpensive. I think I paid like $30 for a year of it. It was not much money, but I don't remember they had a deal or something. But it's even when you get it just off the website, it's not very expensive. And then the other one that I turn off and on occasionally is Acorn TV,
Okay.
which in the U.S. is like a lot of British shows. And I really like a lot of British TV, like Doc Martin, Detectorists, and I don't know, for whatever reason, kind of the TV shows they make in the United Kingdom really appeal to me. I like that they usually have a beginning and an ending. They don't run forever. And occasionally I find one I like, so I'll turn Acorn on long enough to watch it, and then I'll turn it off.
Yeah, Curiosity Stream is one that I've turned on and off over the years. Like if there's,
Yeah.
something that really catches my eye there, or, something kind of makes the rounds that I want to go see. I think it's fascinating because it's one of those things like this would be really hard to pull off before streaming. Like it'd be
Yeah.
hard to have a cable channel that was just high quality documentaries 24/7. But in the streaming world, you can do whatever you want, right? And I think it's cool that this has surfaced as like, if you are into this stuff, this is where you can go. I think it's really neat.
The other thing I think is funny is just listening to us talk. Our attitudes about entertainment services are completely different than apps. Like throughout the show, we're talking about all these apps we subscribe to without a second thought.
Yeah.
And when it comes to entertainment, we're like, is this one earning its way to, can I get rid of this one? You know, it's like it's funny to me that I am not interested in keeping a lot of these entertainment services around, and I keep as few of them as I want. But when it comes to apps, I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things we didn't do is add up how much each one of us is spending.
Yeah, I
on
don't
it,
want to do
and
that. I don't
want
want
to do it either.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I feel like with the media space, like I know that if I did that to like dark noise, Charlie wouldn't know, right? But like I feel partially because if it's our job, right? Like, I feel bad, like in a way. I don't know. And who cares if I turn off Netflix for 3 months, right? Like they'll be fine. So part of it, I think, is just our unique situation.
Well, I feel like time is my most valuable commodity, and if I can exchange money to get time back, I will do it almost every time. And that's what most of these subscriptions are about for me. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Squarespace. Make your next move and enter offer code MPU at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. With Squarespace, you can stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything, your products, services, and even the content you create. Squarespace has got you covered. With Squarespace, you can use insights to grow your business. If you've ever wondered where your site visits and sales are coming from and which channels are most effective, you can analyze all of that in Squarespace. Once you've got the data, you can improve your website and build a marketing strategy based on your top keywords or most popular products and content. You can also stand out in any inbox with Squarespace email campaigns. Why not encourage your visitors to sign up as email subscribers and start them on the journey to becoming loyal customers? Just start with an email template and customize it by applying your brand ingredients like colors and logo, plus the built-in analytics measure the impact of every send. And if you want to get blogging, Squarespace is to do that. Squarespace is a powerful blogging tool to share stories, photos, videos, and updates. It's super easy. You can put any kind of content in and just get rolling. You'll be able to categorize, share, and schedule your posts to make the content work for you. If you want to get started on the internet, there's no place easier than Squarespace. That's where I did it. That's where I sent my wife and my friends to do it. And we continue to use Squarespace because it's just such a great platform. It's constantly evolving and getting better, and it gives you everything you need to build a beautiful website. And it's really affordable too. If you don't have your own presence on the internet, this is the place to go. Head over to squarespace.com/MPU for a free trial, but there's no credit card required. Just start building your site. Within an hour, you'll have a beautiful website. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code MPU to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/MPU. And when you decide to sign up, use that offer code MPU to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for the Mac Power Users. Our thanks to Squarespace for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM.
So we've mentioned a couple of things that we've canceled or gotten rid of over the last little bit. And I'm curious for you, maybe some apps that you tried a subscription or a service you tried that didn't stick. What do you have for us?
The most recent cancellation for me is Portal.
Okay.
It's a relatively new app that it's like a wallpaper, but it's got animation. It's really gorgeous, but and it has sound. And if you have attached smart lighting, it'll change the temperature. I have no complaints. The app was well done. I just don't think I want it. I tried it out and I thought about keeping it. I think it's like $50 a year. And I'm like, I'm not going to get value out of this. When I'm done working, I don't want to look at my computer screen. I just leave the room.
Yeah, I saw this in your list. I had not come across it. It seems like a lot. Like I don't need I don't think I need this. But I guess it's cool if you want it.
Yeah. I did a video on it for the labs that's not out yet. But so labs members are going to learn about Portal. And in the video, I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it. Well, I didn't keep it.
Yeah. One for me that it fits into the category of entertainment, but I kind of kept it here because it's really one that is very seasonal for me, and it's Bally Sports. So when Disney bought part of Fox, Fox had to spin off all their little sports networks. And a lot of those became Bally Sports, which I think in the time since it's filed for bankruptcy, I don't know what their future is, but the Memphis Grizzlies stream on Bally Sports, and it's way cheaper than the NBA, league pass or whatever, and you can watch it real time. You don't have to wait a day, all that stuff. But this is one that is like a hard, like it's paid for when the Grizzlies are playing, and when they lost in the playoffs, it gets turned off. And that's a little bit different than some of the other streaming ones, which I may turn it off depending on what's showing on them, or I hear about a show I want to check out. But this one is basically on a calendar for me. And so it's off right now, and I will re-enable it when the NBA starts back up.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, to a certain extent, sports and entertainment are very similar
Yeah.
in our attitudes for them. When you don't need it, you don't keep it. And that's, again, kind of an advantage of this whole system, right? Where you can,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of eat what you, I guess, pay for what you eat, or whatever the term is. And I like that.
Yeah.
One that you've got on your list also is Headspace. And
Yeah.
I had unsubscribed to that a while ago. I still daily meditate, and I've done it for over 30 years. I was just thinking almost 40 now. And I just don't need Headspace. I just don't need someone in my ear. I find it more distracting, but I still recommend the app for people who want to get into it.
Yeah, you and I talked about this when Headspace came up a couple of years ago. Maybe we did a home screen episode or something. And I really took what you said to heart, and I used it as a way to sort of grow those muscles. But I'm at a point now where I can get into that state without this. And I'll use the Breathe app that comes built on the watch. And there's an app called Unwind, which is basically again, sort of a breathing timer thing that if I'm having a little bit of trouble getting there, I will use that. But Headspace kind of became like, that's actually, I don't need what all this does. And this and Calm, which is their main competitor, both great, but both pretty pricey. And so I kind of got to a point where I was able to move on from it. And so that fell by the wayside maybe about 6 months ago. And it's been totally fine. I've been totally fine without it.
Yeah. I had a subscription to an app called Productive, which is really a habit tracking app, a very nice implementation of it. And I just found that habit tracking through apps is counterproductive. When I'm working on a habit, I'd rather just write it down in a notebook, because I am not a fan of this whole streak thing. I know it's kind of gamification, but then it becomes like its own thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it's really that healthy. So I unsubscribed to Productive.
Yeah, I've tried Streaks before, which is a very similar app. Streaks has this awesome, I love their UI though. Like it's very much
better.
their own thing. But
yeah, I agree.
Kind of the same way. I don't feel like I necessarily want or need to track habits that way. But both are, I think, are both are legitimate if you do find that's something you want in your life.
Yeah, it's funny how some apps you subscribe to, and it's not that you don't like the app, but you just find it doesn't fit you. Like, Headspace, Productive. Another one like that for me is Up Ahead. That was an aspirational subscription. It's a beautiful app that tells you how long until Christmas or your vacation or whatever. And when it came out, everybody was flipping out about how great the UI is, and it's a small developer, and I wanted to lend a hand. So I bought a year of it, but I just never used it. Like in a year, I tried it out, and then I never used it again. So I unsubscribed. It's a great app, just it doesn't scratch an itch that I have.
Yeah, I think that's fair. One that I tried out because it was pretty trendy in our corner of the internet for a little while was Glass, which was pitched as like an Instagram, but not run by Meta. And it is really neat. And like, there's a lot of really cool photographers on there. But I realized that that's just not something that I care about. Like, I don't like Meta, but I'm on Instagram and I got friends and family there. And so that was enough for me. So I played with this for a couple of months and decided it wasn't worth it for me.
Yeah. And I have just a little graveyard of apps that I subscribe to for a month or two where I just tried out for the purpose of talking about it here on Mac Sparky or the Mac Power Users. And I mean, the most recent one there is ReplyCube, which is an Apple Mail plugin, and it didn't really do what I needed it to do. But I always want to give these things a try. And I just don't feel like, I don't want to be the guy that writes the developer and say, hey, can you send me a code? Well,
Yeah.
I just, they're so inexpensive. I'll pay $2 and try it for a month and then make my own decision. And then I don't have the developer writing me back and saying, well, what are you going to say about my app? And, I don't want that. So I've got a lot of apps like that I tried out for a month or two, and I knew I was testing them and really never intended for them to stick.
Yeah, I view a lot of that as just the cost of doing this sort of business. And, I don't do the thing where like, oh, I put this on my, I don't have separate IDs for personal and work, right? It's kind of all the same thing. But for me, I wouldn't experience it the way a customer does. And a lot of these apps we talked about, I know the developers, but my relationship with them is in a professional context, right? And I may or may not use their apps. I know a lot of developers who I don't use their apps. But I think you get into gray area when you ask for something like that, right? Like, I want a bunch of betas of the apps that we talked about because I can provide feedback and we can have a relationship that way. But like we said earlier, most of those that we're on the betas of even, or that we get to check out, we end up paying for because we also want the consumer experience. And I think for both of us, we just try to be as ethical as we can be in that. I'm not saying taking a promo code is unethical. I'm not saying that, but it's simpler not to do it. And I think both you and I value that simplicity.
Yeah. And also because I really feel like I tell people that it's okay to subscribe to apps. I feel like I should do that. Like the David Smith apps are a good example. I don't know if I've ever written about them, but I use them. And I just wouldn't, if I wrote Dave Smith, he would send me coats, right?
Yeah.
But I would rather just pay for it, and so I know it's complicated, I guess would be the answer. But kind of getting back to the beginning of the show, if you come to this with the attitude, subscriptions are evil and this is ruined software, I think you should reconsider. I think there are some good things about it, and it really forces you to make tough choices sometimes. And Stephen, in my case, we probably don't make enough tough choices. We've subscribed to a lot of apps, but like we are also people that pay for our shoes talking about this stuff, so we need to.
Yeah.
And hopefully give you advice so you don't need to subscribe to them all. But I don't think they're evil. I just think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. There are certainly developers out there that are trying to get subscriptions and not do a lot of work, and those should not get your money. But there are others out there. MimeStream is the latest of these, where they absolutely want this to become their full-time job for the foreseeable future, and they want to take your money and they want to give you value back, and those are the ones you should support.
Well said.
Thanks to our sponsors this week, TextExpander, NetSuite, BZG Apps, and Squarespace. We are the Mac Power Users. You can find us over at relay.fm/MPU. You can find the MPU forums at talk.macpowerusers.com, one of my favorite places on the internet. So many smart people there. Go check that out. And we'll see you next time.